Hey, how's it going, YouTube? How y'all doing today? Rain is supposed to pick up real hard here at about noon, maybe about 1 o'clock. It says there's a 96% chance of severe thunderstorms. So, yep, it's gonna be good. This ground is super dry. I need some water on this soil. And then rain's supposed to just keep going. Next week it's supposed to just keep going. This morning, last night, well, ever since I had that discussion with the tax man, I've been making a plan for myself of what I'm gonna do, and I suppose I made an annual budget, and so I think I got it figured out. Well, I got a portion of it figured out so far. As I go, I'm sure that this will I got a rough idea of what I'm looking to do with my money this year. And so what I've got figured out so far is that this year I'm going to increase my budget for the cattle from about 19,000 is what I spent on them this year, and I'm going to increase that to 50,000. I'm going to take that up to 50,000, and I'm going to so here's my plan for how I'm going to do that, right? Because I don't got $50,000. The way I'm gonna do that is here pretty soon, in about 3 months. Man, I have all sorts of money coming in. I don't even know what happened. I got like a refund check, and I got all this stuff happening right now. And in about 3 months, I may legitimately have about $45,000 in my bank account. And yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, it just is what it is. I'm gonna have a large sum of money deposited into my bank account when I liquidate these animals, and then I get like everything figured out in terms of my taxes and all that, and just yep, it's gonna be a large sum of money. It'll be close to like $40,000. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pay back all my debts. I'm gonna pay for all my equipment, and I'm gonna pay for all my cattle, and I'm gonna pay for all the debt that I had on these cattle, and I'll still have about $15,000 left over, about $10,000 to $15,000 left over. And so I went. What I figured I would do is I'm gonna clear up all my debt, and then I'm gonna go to the bank, and I'm gonna ask them for a loan. I'm gonna ask them for a loan. Well, I'm gonna talk to them and see what happens. But right now, the numbers that I'm looking for, I ain't gonna give them a flat out number that I'm looking for, but I'm gonna ask for a loan of $75,000 over 20 years on a 5% interest rate. That's about what the numbers that I'm looking for. If they give me better numbers than that, I'll take it. But if the worst case scenario is that I would be willing to take a $75,000 loan on a 20-year term for 5% interest. Because if I take a $75,000 loan, that's about $500 a month. If I take a $75,000 loan on a 20-year term for 5% interest, that's about $500 a month. And so I'll have even after I pay back all my debt on everything, my equipment, my animals, everything, I'll still have about $10,000 to $15,000 left over. And so if I have $10,000 to $15,000 left over, and I take a credit line that if I maxed it out, if I spent all $75,000, I would owe $500 a month. And if I owe $500 a month, I can cover that debt expense for 2 years, for over 2 years, with just the cash reserves that I have left over after liquidating my animals. And so right now, what I'm gonna do, so that's my plan in terms of that's the best that I could come up with as of right now, in terms of how am I going to generate the capital, enough capital to just drop my taxes, while also being able to fund it correctly, while being able to fund it without I guess just entering a horrible financial situation. And so my big plan right now is that's the big move. That's the big thing that I'm gonna do, is that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna talk to the banker about getting that loan. and I'm gonna see what I can get figured out at the bank. But if I can, I guess it ain't if I can. It's about when. It's about when I get that loan, because as of right now, I know when I talk to that banker, we're gonna have a very good time. That banker is going to. I get along very well with the banker. I tend to get along very well with bankers. If I just sit there and I talk to the banker, we usually tend to get along very well, because I know that I know that I'm there to make money, and I know that they there to make money too. And so and if I don't get along with them, I haven't met a banker that I didn't get along with. And so, knock on wood, if I do happen to meet a banker that I don't get along with, I'll just go to a different bank. But I'm gonna get that loan, and I'm gonna get that loan. I'm gonna use my cash reserves to pay for that loan, and I'm going to take the loan to invest into assets for this farm. And that is gonna be, well, okay. So my big thing right now is that I may actually be in a situation where I make significant sums of money this year. On a piece of paper. On a piece of paper, it'll say that I make a lot of money, but I actually won't be making that much money. The money that I'm making this year, it only really happened because I deducted it from my taxes last year. And so the money that I'm making this year, that's the big idea for what I'm gonna do with the capital that I generate this year. Is I'm gonna leverage it, and I may be able to leverage it by utilizing the money that I made in the equity on this property. So it won't be so I have money that I make on paper, but I have money that I make, I guess it's called, I guess the correct term for it would be unrealized gains. But like the money that I have invested into this property, as well as the appreciation of this property, is not something that is taxable. And so I have that income as well. So on a piece of paper, I'll have made about, I'm estimating that I'll make somewhere between $120,000 to $150,000 on this farm. I guess it won't be on this farm, but it will be in the totality of my income. I'll have made about $120,000 to $150,000. And if I do that, I'll also have made about $30,000 to $35,000 in the equity of this property, through unrealized gains, essentially non-taxable gains, because this property has gone up in value, and I've also been making monthly payments on this farm, so I have a store of equity in this property. And so I may be able to leverage the equity in this property for the loan, and then use my cash reserves to pay for the debt service to drop my taxes. And so my big thing right now is that I would rather hold on to cattle than cash, because if I hold on to cattle, I get to tax deduct it, and I don't have to pay taxes. As long as I'm holding cattle, I don't have to pay taxes. And so that's I'm going to increase my budget for these animals to about $50,000 this year, and that'll solve about half of my problem, maybe a third, depending on. But as I go, I'll keep track of how much money I'm actually generating on this farm, and then I'll have to gauge it as I go. But what may actually end up happening is that I may end up having to, if worse comes to worst, the thing that I would be looking to do is to just buy as much cattle as I can, even if that means I need to buy another piece of property. As long as I get a decent price on the cattle. It doesn't have to be a good price. It doesn't have to, but it can't also be a bad price. If it's just middle of the market, even if I just pay average price for the animal, that's perfectly fine with me, and that'll give me that'll give me the enough assets to deduct all of my taxes. So that's the big plan. I actually know of a livestock auction, an internet livestock auction here about an hour away in Fort Worth, and I know I watch their auctions on the internet, and they sell they sell $50,000 worth of cattle. They sell $100,000 worth of cattle per lot. So if I just bought one lot of animals from something like that, I could spend all $50,000 in just one transaction, and that $50,000 will be tax will be I'll be able to deduct it from my taxes. And in the worst and with an auction like that, if I took animals from an auction like that, I could raise them up until they're about 700 pounds and then put them back on that auction, right? I mean, the next year I could just put them right back on that auction. And so it ain't that big of a deal. The big problem would be is if I liquidate these animals and then I take the money for them, and then I have my income from the so my big problem would be is if I go through two lot of animals this year. Because if I go through two lot of animals this year, like if I, instead of saying I'm gonna raise peewee calves, I'm going to raise the big ones. I'm going to raise the 4 weights up to a 7 weight, and then I liquidate them again. I'll have made about on a piece of paper, I'll have made about $50,000, but I didn't make $50,000. But okay. Here's the thing that I figured out when I was thinking about this as I was going over my budget for the year. Is if I do go through 2 lot of cattle this year and I liquidate them before the next year, I will be able to tax deduct the lot that I purchased this year, even if I make an income on them. And so I make about 50. If I make about 50,000, I'll be able to deduct about probably about 35,000 of that this year. If I put in $35,000 and I made 50,000, I can deduct the 15,000, or I can deduct the 35,000 from my taxes this year. But that I still have the cattle from last year though, and if I liquidate them this year and I deducted them on my taxes this year, it's just gonna be flat income. On this year, it's gonna look like I made 25 grand, and so or whatever, $25,000. And so that's where the big problem is that if I liquidate my second lot of animals this year, I won't be able to tax deduct, or I'll be able to tax deduct them, but the income that I earn on them will be what's tax deducted. And so it's in my best interest to keep the lot of animals up until next year. So if I purchase a second lot of animals this year, it would be in my best interest to hold on to them until next year, unless something really big happens and I decided that I'm going to just liquidate both of my herds. So that's the big thing that I came up with. And I was like, man, okay, so I'm looking for just, even if it's just average price, that's okay with me. As long as it ain't a bad deal, it doesn't have to be a good deal. Even if I just pay middle of the market for the animals, that's perfectly fine with me, because I need the tax deduction. And so I was kind of looking at things, and I was like, you know what? I would also be willing to start a Roth IRA, because that would give me another $6,000 that I can tax deduct while investing into equities. And my thing was, if I was going to hedge the totality of my investments, like if I was going to hedge my cattle, my land, if I was going to hedge the totality of my investments right now by utilizing the stock market, what would I do? And my answer to that right now, the best thing that I could come up with is I think that the best thing to do as of right now would be to purchase short-term U.S. Treasury bonds. Short-term U.S. Treasury bonds right now, the yield curve is inverted from my understanding. And if the yield curve, the short-term Treasury bonds right now are yielding something like 4 to 5%. Even the long Treasury bonds are yielding something like a 3.5% or something like that, or 4.5% or something like that. And so if I was going to hedge the totality of my investments, what would I do? I would invest in the U.S. Treasury bond as of right now. And my reasoning for the investment in the U.S. Treasury bonds is because, well, my whole thing about the U.S. Treasury bonds is that if the certificate price of a bond fell to zero, the dollar wouldn't be worth anything anyway, because the only reason for the yield to go up that high is if an economy is inflating uncontrollably. And so if there's hyperinflation, the certificate price of a bond would fall to zero. And at that point, it wouldn't even matter if I had cash, because if I had money, it wouldn't be worth anything anyway, because the yields are so high. The only reason for yields to go up that high would be if the dollar is worth nothing. And so, but if the certificate price of the bond goes up very high and the yield drops, that means that the bond, the dollar is doing hey, knock it off. But if the certificate price of a bond falls substantially, that means that the rate is the rate is falling, the yield is falling. And to hedge the broader equities market, like if I was going to hedge not everything, but if I was going to hedge my investments, the way that I would do it would be to buy treasury bonds. My personal that's my personal belief. I wouldn't go and short the cattle market or anything like that. Like if I was really worried that if I saw a potential for a poor outcome in the cattle business, I wouldn't go and short the cattle market. I don't think that'd be a good idea. Or I mean, I'm sure it is a good idea for the people who know how to do it, but to hedge the totality of my investments, I would buy the U.S. bond, the treasury bond, a short-term treasury bond, and I would just tax deduct it by putting it into a Roth IRA. And the big idea of the treasury bond would be that it gives me a yield of 4 to 5%, which is better than cash. It's tax deductible, which is great. And that bond, if the certificate price of a bond goes to zero, I wouldn't want cash anyway. The only reason for that to happen is if there was a hyperinflationary event. And so and also, as of right now, the news, the word around town is that we could be heading into a recession, especially with the U.S. Treasury yield curve inverted. We are very well headed into a recession. And if we head into a recession with the U.S. Treasury bonds at 4 to 5% yield, I mean, the bond market will absorb a tremendous sum of capital. It will be a lot of money, and the bond market is capable of absorbing much more capital than the broader U.S. equities markets. And so if we went into a recession right now with the bond market yielding with U.S. Treasury bonds yielding somewhere between 3 to 5%, the bond market would absorb a tremendous sum of capital. And I personally think that the black swan event, the elephant in the room for a black swan event right now is the U.S. Treasury market. With yields so high, if the growth of the U.S. economy potentially went negative or anywhere in that direction, the bond market would absorb a tremendous sum of capital. And I mean, it would cause major problems in the broader equities. And so I think that the best like, and also if I put something into a Roth IRA, it essentially means that I'm going to be holding on to it forever. It's going to be there when I'm like 70. And so so when I think about it like that, if I was going to buy something and hold on to it forever today, what would I buy? And I would buy the U.S. Treasury. And the reason I would buy the U.S. Treasury is to be a hedge against against the majority of my investments. Because, well, I was really just thinking about where am I going to invest capital so that I don't have to pay taxes, and where can I invest, what can I do to just, I guess, make things, to just kind of keep things going. And that's the best that I could come up with. So I got to go to the bank and I got to ask for a loan. And I know the numbers that I'm looking for. I'm going to talk to the banker first. I need a loan, and I need to put money into a Roth IRA account. Those are my two big things that I came up with yesterday. And if it turns into a worst comes to worst situation, what I'd be willing to do is I'd be willing to go to one of these markets where they sell a lot of cattle for $50,000, $75,000 and just buy one lot of cattle, deduct that on my taxes, pay the $500 a month for them, and call it a day. And yep, but that's the best that I could come up with as of right now. But the cattle are all going off the grass. And that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.